let's talk about a fun game that you can play to practice your Korean, known as 끝말잇기. Literally, the end word connecting, so connecting words. This is actually pronounced, according to sound change rules, as 끝말잇기. Why is that? Well, it's actually known as 니은 첨가. So 니은 addition. 니은 is this letter, and it has to do with when you combine two words together, there can sometimes be a new 니은 created. In this case, it actually becomes a lir, as you can see. I'll make a video about this later, but for right now, you don't need to worry about it. Just know that it's pronounced this way. So let me give you a quick demonstration of how this game is played. One person might say 한국인. Then the next person has to find a word that starts with 인. So maybe they'll say 인삼. And then the next person could say 삼겹살. Now this game is also known as 쿵쿵따. This is actually a different version of the game. It was popular from a TV show where comedians would play this game and they would sing and dance. And normally before they start this game in the show, the comedians would do something like 꿍수 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 쿵쿵따리 쿵쿵따 쿵쿵따리 쿵쿵따 쿵쿵따리 쿵쿵따 쿵쿵쿵쿵. I'm trying to remember it. I haven't seen the show in forever. Anyway, if you want to watch me actually playing this game, I did a collaboration video together with Korean Ara and Korean Dream, which we filmed together in Busan, and I will link that in the description below, so you can watch me humiliate myself. But there is something really good about this game, and that is when they play this game on the TV show, as well as when many people play this game, you add in 쿵쿵따 between each word. So you might say 한국인, 쿵쿵따, 인삼, 쿵쿵따, 삼겹살, 쿵쿵따. And it kind of helps keep a rhythm, so it's really easy to tell when someone has failed if someone can't match that rhythm. So this is the basic way to play. You give a word, the next person has to come up with a word that starts with that last syllable, and so on, and if you're unable to do that, then you lose. But the version they play on this show is actually different. It has its own rules. In fact, they don't even really keep those rules a lot of the times. But so don't consider this the same game, but just know that this is also a thing. And in this video though, I wanted to talk about the standard rules for playing. So let me just clear the board first. So rule number 1, using a dictionary is completely not allowed. That would be like using a dictionary to play Scrabble. And really that just defeats the whole purpose of playing the game in the first place, which is to have fun and or to practice your Korean. Anyone can just look things up in a dictionary. So yeah, no dictionaries when you're playing the game. Rule number 2, you can only use nouns. So you can't use, say, verbs like 먹다. However, you could use the noun 식사. Also note that the word you pick has to have at least 2 syllables. This should be obvious though. I mean, if you were to say 식사 and the person just replied by saying 사, and then you just replied by saying that again and over again, the game would never end. Or if you were to say something that ends with 오 and you just said 오, and they reply 오, 오, 오. Yeah, so it has to have at least 2 syllables, and it can only be 1 word. So you can't stick 2 or 3 words together as one. And rule number 3, you cannot use proper nouns. So you can't use the name of a person. You also can't use the name of a place or a famous building or something like that. Rule number 4 is you cannot use archaic, so old, no longer used words. You also can't use dialect or slang. So you can't use an uncommon spelling of an internet word. This would really quickly lead to words that simply cannot be connected to another word. So the point is, it has to be a regular word that anyone can find in any dictionary. And it should be a word that other people can recognize as a real word, because if you were to throw out some archaic, word that no one uses anymore, then it's just going to stall the game while everyone has to search if what you said was a real word in the dictionary. The next rule is that you cannot repeat a word that's already been said. For example, the first person says 정원, the next person says 원인, and the next person says 인정. Well, after that, you're not allowed to just repeat this again, or else it can lead to an infinite loop. So to avoid any sort of loops, any repeating patterns, you're not allowed to repeat any word that's already been said in that game. The next rule has to do with the letters 니은 and lir. Now, if you're using a word that ends with a nian, you're allowed to start the next word with a word that either starts with a nian, if you can find one, or just an iang. And if you use a word that ends with a lir, the next person is allowed to use another word that starts with this, or they can change that word either to a nian or into a iang. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. If someone uses the word 선생님, the next person does not necessarily have to use a word that starts with 님. They have the option to, and usually will, use a word that starts with 임. So you could use 임금. Or if someone gives the word 사람 for person, you don't have to start a word with 람. You could actually go for a word that either starts with 남 or with am. So for nam, you could do maybe 남자, and am, maybe you could do 암호. And without this rule, you're pretty much going to lose anytime someone throws out a word that ends with this because there aren't that many. But again, this is optional, so you don't have to change it, but you can, and you probably will. Now, this concept is actually known as 법칙. And I made a whole video all about this. It's actually a very large topic if you're curious to know more about how this works in other parts of Korean, not just in this game. And I will leave a link to the video I made about it in the description box below. But you don't need to learn all about this concept in order to just play the game. This information is plenty to play. And the last rule, which is very important, is you cannot end words with syllables that simply do not have any Korean words that start with them. Here, this is the word for kitchen, 부엌. Well, there aren't any words that start with ok, neither are there any words that start with uk for the letter kiuk, which is the name of this letter. Just do your best, and if someone says there is none, well, just try to think of a different word that you can use instead. Now, although there are some like these, which are just pretty much impossible. At least I don't know any words that start with these. Let me know if you've seen any. There are some words, actually a lot of words, that are considered attack words, meaning they end with syllables that are very, very rare, but do exist. An example would be 그릇. Well, you of course could change this to 느, but then do you know any words that start with this? 느치. But yeah, most people don't even know this word. People might learn this word just specifically to defend against this one, but otherwise it's not a word you're going to normally use. And there are dozens and dozens of attack words. Feel free to use them, especially if you're playing against a native Korean. You know, you have to try as hard as you can not being a native speaker. So maybe even go out and learn some of these attack words to use. But don't feel bad if someone uses one to you. It's just a part of the game. Sometimes they happen, and try to get better so that you can defend against it for the next time. So have any of you out there played this game before? What's your favorite word to use? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again in the next episode. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.